colleagues. I welcome everyone for today's webinar, which is hosted by Synergy Exposures and Events India Private Limited and Hitex Hyderabad. Thank you for joining us for today's session, which is about upcoming trends and scope in exotic fruit wines. I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Nilesh Lele, who is a young, dynamic technocrat having 20 years of experience in various fields in India and USA. He is a first generation entrepreneur, founder and managing director of Excellon Food Bio Advisors Private Limited that provides technical and management consultancy to startups and small and medium enterprises in food industry. He is proprietor of Excellon Basket, which is into manufacturing of carbonated and non-carbonated beverages such as jeera masala, orange, lemon, mango, and coconut. He is also proprietor of Fruit and Beverages, which is into manufacture of exotic fruit wines such as mango and jamun wines. He is president at Chamber for Advancement of Small and Medium Business. Also, he is a senior member of AIFPA. Also, it is an honor for me to share that he won the Best Innovation Award at Global Coconut Conclave for exotic fruit wines at the hands of Shri Suresh Prabhu, Honorable Minister of Commerce and Industries, and Shri Uddhavji Thackeray. He is founding partner of Ramp Up Advisory LLP, which provides investment banking advisory. Before we proceeding further, I would like to address all attendees that kindly mute yourself throughout the session. We have Q&A at the end. You may post your queries in the chat box. Also, e-certificates are not available at this point for this webinar. This is a knowledge sharing session. Now, I request Mr. Nilesh Lele to take over the session. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers, the Hitex team, Sandhya madam, and everybody else. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. I think I have seen few familiar faces who have joined from outside India. And I take this opportunity where I will talk about fruit wine. And like madam suggested, feel free to put questions simultaneously if they're relevant. I'll try to answer them, or we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So let me jump into the session, which I will try to cover in 40 minutes or so. And then eventually at the end, we may have time of around 20 minutes to cover any Q&As that you may have. So as most of us are aware that when we talk about wines, grapes wines is typically what comes into our mind. But there are so many other fruits from which fantastic wines can be made, and especially there are a lot of tropical fruits. Like currently I'm sitting in Mumbai, and close to Mumbai we have a Konkan region where you have mango, you have jamun, you have jackfruit, which many of them are even superfoods. And typically when you make wine out of it, which is a way of preserving fruit, most of the health benefits of those fruits retain in the wines that we make. And that's why this whole exotic fruit wines is relatively a new and upcoming field. I mean, I know that at least 6 such wineries exist in Maharashtra. 2 of them are meaderies. They use honey as their base. The other 4 are obviously using fruits such as chiku, pineapple, mango, jamun, and other fruits. There are many fruit wineries in Himachal, more than 5-6 fully functional wineries. There is one in Arunachal and probably few more across India. So as many states realize that winemaking is actually an extension of food processing, most of the states are coming up with their own wine policies. They are trying, in fact, in Maharashtra, we are trying where the regulations are made easier with regards to making or setting up the winery as well as selling it, right? You know, like if you've seen many of the foreign countries, typically wine or even beer is sold from a grocery store. So that is something that we are trying to request the government to acknowledge and allow us, so that it makes making as well as selling it very easy. So as I see, fruit wines are still in a nascent stage. as far as India is concerned, obviously in Chile and South Africa, what we call the new wine world, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, there are many fruit wineries already, but as far as India is concerned, it's still in a nascent stage. And as we go along, more and more fruit wineries, and the public will start appreciating these fruit wineries and the wines, obviously. So today I'm going to touch upon, and it's going to be a very short session, so I'll touch upon basic things as to what the wines are, what are some of the best fruits to make wine, what is the process, what is the typical machinery that is needed. In Maharashtra, I will touch upon what are the licensing process, especially the excise, because at this point in time, alcoholic beverages are still under state excise, so it's still a state issue. So every state has their own rules. Some of them are like, for example, dry states like Gujarat and Bihar. So I would recommend that wherever you are, do try and understand the local wine policy. But based on Maharashtra, where I am right now, I'll discuss what the licensing requirements are, briefly touch upon how much it costs to set up such a winery, and probably, if time permits, look at one recipe of mango wine. So before I get into more technical stuff, let us understand that what is wine, right? We keep hearing or we keep talking about wine, but what exactly is it? What's the definition as per FSSAI, which is our Food Safety Standards Authority of India? What does the food law say? So it's classified. Sorry. So it's classified as a alcoholic beverage, and the alcohol content typically is between 7% and 15.5%. If some of you are already wine drinkers or connoisseurs, you must have been knowing these terms, where we call some wines which are dry, which typically have less sugar content. Some of them are sweet, containing even more than 4.5% sugar. So there are different types of varieties. I mean, grapes and other fruit is one type of differentiation in wines, but taste with regards to the residual sugar or the end sugar is another way of differentiating wines. And as per FSSAI, you're even allowed to add external alcohol up to 4%, but you cannot, then you have to call it a fortified wine, or if you have been to Goa, you may have seen certain what are called port wines. These are typical classifications of grape wines. Initially, I'll talk a little bit on grapes, because obviously there is a lot of overlap between grapes as well as fruit wines. But typically in grape wines also, we have red wine, where it's made from the grapes and it's crushed along with the skin, and skin is left even during fermentation. In white wines, it's typically done from the juice of green grapes, and there's no skin involved during the fermentation process. Rosé wine is where it is like a red wine, but the skins are left during fermentation for only a few days, not throughout the fermentation process. Then we have fortified wines, which can go all the way up to 20% alcohol content. We can also have different aromatized wines. We can add herbs, spices, and we are all familiar with the wine called champagne, which falls under the group called sparkling wines, right? So these are all different differentiations of wines, typically in grape. Now let's also understand that why grape became very popular, and what are the challenges between the grape wine versus making wines from other fruits. So technically we talk about this concept of sugar to acidity ratio, and that's perfect as far as grapes is concerned. Ideally, you need sugar content of, let's say, 20% or more, because thumb rule is percentage of sugar, you half of it will be the alcohol percentage. So if your starting sugar is, you get 10 alcohol content, right? So some of our fruits like jamun is only 13% sugar content, so you're going to get only 6.5% alcohol content. Maybe we make from even kokum, like Garcinia, which has hardly any sugar content. So most of our tropical fruits don't have as much sugar content as someone like a grape has. Similarly, the pH, ideal pH is anywhere between 3 to 4, and some of the fruits are way more citrus and way more acidic, and some of them are not that acidic. So the sugar to acidity ratio tends to be a problem or a challenge, and that's why most of the fruit wines, you will need a little bit of balancing, or rather I would put it this way, wine making, everything is kind of built in there, which is a problem with a lot of tropical fruits like let's say a guava, or fruits like chiku will have latex. Then typically you need tannin, which gives you feeling to your throat, which is lacking in many of our fruits, like let's say a banana or a mango for that matter. Similarly, the color, the red color, the red grapes and its color is very much stable, whereas some of our fruits, colored fruits, let's say a pomegranate or a strawberry, the color is not stable, right? So retaining the color becomes a challenge. So these are the key differences, the key reason why grape wines have evolved whereas some of the other not are still nascent phases, because like some of the wineries I spoke about in Maharashtra, for example, we are still early days. We are still reaching a point where our wines are perfect and are in a suitable position to compete with the biggies in the grape wine. So let us go a little bit into the technical aspect of things. Obviously, wine making is many a times a scale kind of an operation. But at this point, I would like to also tell you that wine making, there is an art involved, right? And there is a science involved. And when we do a home scale, it's more art than science. But when we want to do commercial scale, there is a lot of science that also goes into it. So my today's talk, I'm focus a little bit on the science part of it. I'm sure most of you who are here, I see 106, 107 participants. Probably some of you are home winemakers or maybe even commercial winemakers. So I'll tell you where the key difference is and how maybe even at home scale you can make commercial scale wines, right? So let us understand what fruits to use and what the process flow is. So like I mentioned, the best would be high sugar fruits. So maybe a banana or a mango or a jackfruit is probably a better option than citrus fruits, because they will tend to have higher sugar content. X amount of sugar, alcohol content will be half of X, right? So most of these are around 20% sugar content, so you will get 10% alcohol content, vis-a-vis grapes where you can have even up to 30% sugar content, and that's why you get wines of even 15%. Secondly, if possible, any fruits, let's say a pomegranate or a mango or any fruit for that matter, if possible, you should try to sell them fresh, the best quality fruit. But if you have B grade, C grade, not sellable in the market, or there's an excess fruit production, like I'll give you example that we make strawberry wines, and we use the wine strawberries where the green leaf on top of the strawberry is not there. So the sellability of such fruit is lower. But for winemaking, it's fantastic because it saves me that one step of removing that the green leaf on the top of the fruit, right? So so try to use the grade fruits principle of fruit processing, where best produce should be sold fresh, excess or B grade, C grade not sellable in the market should be processed. So similarly, availability of fruit is very important because most of our fruits are seasonal as well as regional. So selection will depend on that. If you are from a mango belt, you go for mango. You might be from a kiwi belt. You might be from a chiku belt, wherever you are. And at this point, I'll also like to tell you, many people ask me this question: can we make wine of so and so thing? I would like to give like a blanket answer here that technically we can make wine from any fruit because sugar gets converted into alcohol. Similarly, in wine making process, you are even allowed as per law to add sugar. So addition of sugar is allowed. So technically you can make wine from anything which has sugar or which even doesn't have sugar, or you can blend banana, like kokum wine that we make, we blend it with banana where the sugar comes from banana. In fact, if you see sake, the Japanese beverage or a Japanese drink is basically wine. It's made from rice, right? So technically, this question should not come to you that whether we can make wine from so and so thing. The most likely answer is yes, you can make wine as long as this fruit has sugar content in it. Definitely you can make wine out of it. Here's a simple process flow of winemaking, which typically we divide into three, where the first phase is similar to any fruit processing. So you select the fruits, you do sorting, grading, you do washing, then you do peeling, then you may do the juice extraction. And so this step is basically like any other fruit processing. If you have done orange fruit processing or a mango fruit processing, first steps are exactly the same as that. Then the second step, where the technical and the science part starts coming in, is where initially we do what is called Brix adjustment. So depending on how much alcohol you want, you will have to adjust the sugar content. So you do that, then you do a little bit of, you add a little bit of potassium metabisulfite, or what is called sulfur treatment, where the bacteria that we don't want them to grow, we kill them or we inhibit them, but the yeast that is going to help us do the fermentation, that doesn't get impacted. So around 40 ppm or so, we add potassium metabisulfite, then we add the yeast, and the yeast is the one who, for whom the sugar is its food, and it converts that sugar into alcohol in the fermentation process. Once the fermentation is complete, means sugar content is zero and alcohol content has reached its maximum possible level, that means the fermentation is done, your alcohol formation has happened. But the wine is not ready yet, because what customer wants is a very, very clear, what we call the clarified wine. And that's where this step of racking comes into picture, where we keep it for some time, we let things that are heavier settle down, we let things that are lighter float up, remove them, and take the wine that is in the middle part. So we do this kind of a racking step around 2 to 3 times, 2 to 3 cycles of around 15 days each, because of which the wine will become clear. Once the racking, you're happy with the racking, you're happy that it's clear enough, then you can take it for filtration. What if you don't do this racking? That's also possible, but what will happen is it will put much more load onto your filtration system. Typically we use plate and frame filters, and then follow, and I'm going to show all these pictures, and then eventually we use what are called cartridge filters. So plate and frame, maybe 10 micron followed by 5 micron, and then cartridge filter maybe 1 micron and even 0.2 micron. It will depend on which fruit you have used and how much clarification you want to do. Once the filtration is done, and probably filtration is the most important difference between a commercial and a home scale production, because at home scale we use that dhoti kapda or like some muslin cloth or something, where the best you may get is not, maybe not less than 10 micron. But at a commercial scale we go all the way down to even 1 micron, and that's why our wine is much clearer compared to the home scale, where it tends to be much more cloudy. To give an example, you know how Sprite or any of those those green bottle drinks, they look like if you pour them in glass of water, I mean in a glass, versus if you pour lemonade or a limca, there's a key difference, right? So lemonade or a limca is a cloudy version of the lemon drink, whereas Sprite is what we call clear lemon. So a similar difference will be here, where depending on how good your filtration is, your wine will be clear. Once that is done, again we add a little bit of sulfur, which will work as a preservative or KMS, so that and I'll answer all the questions when we come to the recipe. I will tell you exactly what the numbers should be, and once that is done, then you can bottle it, and the wine is ready for dispatch. You can store it, maybe if you want you can age it. Typically we don't age any of these wines, because most of our fruits are flavorful itself. Let's say a jackfruit or a mango or even a jamun for that matter is very flavorful. You don't really need to do flavor development as much as you need to do for a grape, right? So most of these wines are ready in short period of time and can be consumed what is called young. So they can be consumed in 2 to 3 years of their manufacturing. You don't necessarily have to age them for years and years and consume it later. Okay, so this is a simple reaction where you have the fruits, whatever the sugar plus the yeast will give us the alcohol, ethyl alcohol. and the carbon dioxide. Typically at alcohol content of around 15%, the yeast growth stops, and that's why it's almost impossible to make any wines with an alcohol content above 15%. That's one of the reasons why, as per FSSAI definition, you cannot have more than 15.5% alcohol content in wine. Secondly, many times this question comes up. If you use wine yeast, then the formation of chances of formation of methanol, which is lethal, you can die if you drink methanol, is zero, as good as zero, if you are using what is called wine yeast, because wine yeast is role is to convert the sugar into ethanol, ethyl alcohol, whereas there are certain different types of yeast where they can convert uh, sugar into methanol. So definitely, if you use the right yeast, and I'm going to tell you which yeast to use, definitely, or generic way, it's called wine yeast, then the chances of formation of methanol or methyl alcohol is as good as zero. So this is a racking process that I had mentioned earlier. I am trying to show it in a picture where you have a tank and you let it settle. You keep it like that for 15 days, and then anything that's floating up versus anything that is settled down, you remove that. You don't take that, and anything that is in between, you transfer it to another tank or another whatever jerry can or whatever you're using at home, or commercially if you're doing, you may have a fermenter or a tank. You keep it in this tank for new tank for 15 days. Again, you let it settle. If anything is going to settle, and if anything is going to float, you can let it float. Again, you take the middle part. Many people ask me that what if we don't do racking? Yes, that's possible, but then the load on your filtration will be very high, and because of that, filter papers are expensive, the cartridge of the filter is expensive, so it is much better because it's going to get choked, right? As soon as you pass through a 1 micron cartridge filter, everything that's above 1 micron is going to get choked, and it's going to choke the filter, right? So that's why what we are doing is anything that's heavier or larger, we are removing first, then we are using filter papers to remove anything about 10 micron, then 5 micron, then 1 micron. If anybody has worked on this concept of sieving, that's what we are doing. First we remove the bigger particles, then the smaller, then the smaller, then the smaller. So that's the whole idea behind racking. And again, the racking, the quantity of racking or the number of times or the days required with regards to how much racking to do will again depend on which fruit you are using. The more the pulpier the fruit is, the more the racking that might be needed. More the juicier it is, the less the racking. Let me also tell the difference between the two words I just used. So mango, when we process it, what we get is the mango pulp. We don't get mango juice. Whereas orange, when we process it, we get orange juice, right? So that's the key difference. So most of our tropical fruits are pulpy. You take mango, you take jamun, you take jackfruit, you take banana. These are all pulpy fruits. They will tend to have more fiber, more soluble solids, more insoluble solids, and that's why filtration, removing, making them clear. Just think about it. You have a mango pulp, and now you want to make it into a clear white color, and I'll show you we have photos later on, white color drink or a beverage or a wine, right? So there is so much efforts that will be needed to clarify the starting juice or the starting, in most of the cases, pulp that we have. So here's what we call is, this you'll see, it's a much cloudier kind of a wine, and after a few rounds of racking and then filtration, this one on the left is where it's much more clear and will be accepted by the public, whereas right side is something which we make when we make at home. Typically it looks like that. So the whole fight in this wine making is going to be how clear your wine is, right? And along with that, how the flavor development is going to happen, and the color, the taste, the flavor, the aroma, all of those things, how it gets developed, all of those things are very, very important as far as wine is concerned, especially because wine drinkers are connoisseurs. Wine is considered and it is a more expensive drink. So people who are drinking wines are going to appreciate and are going to understand the notes. They are going to understand the tears. They are going to understand the flavors. So all of these things are very, very important as far as especially fruit wine is concerned. Let me also talk about certain more challenges that fruit wines they face, like pomegranates. Removing of arils is a big problem. You cannot really just juice it, because if the during the juicing process through a screw expeller, or the seeds get crushed, and the bitterness of the seeds will move into the juice, and that's why you have to remove the arils and then juice them. Similarly, jamun is very, very seasonal, is available hardly 15 days. And any region it is not available for more than 15 days. Mango is again regional, and becomes a challenge. Orange typically is not used for wine making, mostly used for juice making, like we have orange beverages. Papaya has an issue with pectin. Because of pectin, if the pectin is not broken down through some enzyme treatment or some other way through filtration, then what may happen is your wine will not be as clear. Custard apple has what we call sitafal, has sandy nature. Chiku has sandy nature and latex. Jackfruit is very, very difficult to process. The yield is also very low. You take 1 ton of jackfruit as a fruit, you get hardly 200 liters of wine. Whereas if you take 1 ton of mango, you get around 330 liters of wine. If you take 1 ton of strawberry, you get almost 1,000 liters of wine. So yield is again very important, because in the case of strawberry, there is no seed per se or skin, right? It's almost 100% fruit can be used to make wine. Whereas in jackfruit, a very less percentage of it gets converted into pulp and then juice. In mango, at least you get 50% pulp, and through the process, it comes down to around 30% is the yield. So there are so many key challenges where with our tropical fruits. So you have to understand, because at the end of the day, we are in a business. So we need to understand the cost of manufacturing. We need to understand what price point we will be able to sell. Because even though ours is a premium kind of a product, there is a benchmark. Grape wine is a benchmark as to what you can sell wines for, right? So how much more premium compared to grape wine is a limiting factor. So if today most of the Indian made grape wines 750 ml are available at, let's say, 800 rupees, how much more can you sell it? Maybe 1,000, maybe 1,200, but you may not be able to sell it for 5,000, right? So the all of these cost impacts of your raw material, of your process, needs to be considered when you when you decide to get into a winemaking. So let's quickly get into the machinery if you want to go for a commercial scale, and I have some photos, so it will make it even easier. If you remember the process flow, the first part was obviously fruit processing. So you have washing tanks, you will need a pulper if it's like a mango, jamun. You may need a screw type juice extractor if you're, let's say, you are using a pomegranate, or a basket press if again it's a pulpy fruit. So depending on what fruits you are using, the first part of your processing may vary, or you can use the common for many fruits as well. Again, it will depend on what fruits you choose. Second set was our fermenters, and I'm going to show you the photos. They're basically stainless steel tanks which are jacketed, through which we can pass water, because of which we can maintain the temperature. Typically during fermentation we use 20 degrees Celsius, and post fermentation we use 10 degrees Celsius as the temperature of these fermenters. And to maintain that, we will need a chilling unit, like a refrigeration unit. I'll show you the photos, or if anybody is already in a beverage making or a soda making unit, they may have seen a chilling unit. Then there are certain other optional things like a centrifuge. We can have a filter press, or a plate and frame. We have one plate and frame. We do have a cartridge filter, where then you will need for final, once the wine is ready to fill, then you will need maybe a semi-automatic bottle rinsing, filling and capping machine. And if need be, typically small wineries don't have, but you can have your own culture room, and certain other miscellaneous equipments like trays, racks, etc. is more or less the machinery list that you will need. So this is a setup. Um, this is a setup of small scale, very small scale experiment level winery that we have in Ratnagiri district of Maharashtra. And here you can see basically we have 500 liters, 3 tanks here, 3 fermenters. One of them has a stirrer at the top. So in case you want to add sugar syrup or do an enzyme treatment or various other things, we are able to do it. On the left hand side here, we have a centrifuge. So if centrifuge is nothing but if at home we have a spin dryer for clothes, both of them work on the same concept of centrifugal force. So it's used basically to convert fruit, like basically clarify our fruit juice or even clarify our fruit wines. I mean, before the wine is made, it's in the juice format, or after the wine is made in the wine format, you can do. Here we have what is called a basket press. We have a small 2-head bottling unit here, and we have a very small capping unit here. I have larger photos, so I will on those photos probably I'll be able to show you more. So the again we can see much more close up of these 3 tanks, 500 liters each. You have a manual at the front. You have this, which is the racking wall. So we take the wine out of here. Anything below that, we don't take it, right? There's a drain wall at the bottom. We also have a small 100-liter fermenter over here, and you can see the 2 pipes at the back, which is one will carry the cold water into these jacketed tanks, and second one will send back the hot water back to the chiller. This is our chilling unit, a simple refrigeration unit. We have a control panel here on the left where we control the temperature of each fermenter. Here we have a 100-liter tank where this is a manual in the front for cleaning purposes. There's a manual on the top. This is your racking wall. This is your drain wall. There is one here from where we can take a sample out. So what happens is these are like a one directional wall. So during the sample withdrawal, we have to ensure that air doesn't go in, because we should not allow the wine especially to come in contact with air. What we are trying to do is what is called anaerobic fermentation using yeast, right? As against that, once the fermentation happens, now alcohol is ready, and now if it comes in contact with air, and if there are any bacteria, then the bacteria in what is called aerobic condition will convert the alcohol into acid, which is your acetic acid, which is basically vinegar. And so if any of you have tried at home, probably in first few batches you ended up actually getting vinegar rather than wine, is because you didn't have those airlocks, you allowed air to get in, and probably why the alcohol actually got converted into acid, right? So this is another 500-liter of our fermenter tank, which has a stirrer. This is a simple fermenter without stirrer. This is the third one. These are the basket press, like I mentioned, because I want to convert the juice, the pulp into juice, right? So this will do that, where I put my pulp in it, and from the top I'll keep pressing. There'll be like a filter here, and only the juice will come out from this one. So from pulp to juice, if you want to go, there are multiple ways. You could use a basket press, you could do an enzyme treatment, or you could do a centrifuge. So since we have an experimental kind of a setup, or like a R&D kind of a setup, we have everything. We have an enzyme treatment reactors, we have basket press, we have centrifuge, because we are trying to create data for each kind of fruits. We have done wines from more than 20 such fruits, including flowers of mawa. If you're familiar, I know a lot of tribal areas, they do make mawa liquor or alcohol, but it's more on the distilled side of things. Whereas what we are discussing here is not distilled. There is no boiling or anything. What we are discussing here is this is fermentation. So, and that's why having good fruit is important, like cashew apple or kaju bonda, we call it in Marathi. We use that also to make wines, but we need fresh fruit, we need good fruit. We cannot have damaged fruit, which is okay for the manufacturing of feni, which is a popular drink in Goa, but feni is a distilled drink, whereas what we're talking about today is not a distilled drink, it's a fermented drink, right? So like how we make dahi from doodh, which is through a bacterial fermentation. Similarly, here we are using yeast to ferment the fruit juice into fruit wine. Okay, so hopefully that's clear with regards to distilled versus non-distilled. So here is a centrifuge. So you will see the pulp going in and coming out in much juicier form, because here inside we keep a bag of 50 micron. So whatever is greater than 50 micron, what we call pomace, or 75 micron, or even up to 5 micron, we keep it in there. Anything that is greater than that size will get stuck inside that bag, and anything that is smaller than that will come out. Similar principle to our spin dryer at home, our washing machine at home, where after washing, it spins, and during spinning the water gets thrown out and clothes become dry. There we are more interested in the clothes, whereas here we are more interested in the juice and not in the pomace. There we are interested in the clothes, and we throw away this water into drain, right? So that's the only difference, but theory wise it's the same. Here's a plate and frame filter where we put filter paper into each of these plates, and through the pump we send wine from one side which we want to filter, and on the other side we will get the filtered, much more clarified wine coming out. If anybody is interested, since because of lack of time I'm not going to show the video, but if anybody is interested, our winery 9-minute video is also on YouTube. So if anybody is interested, they can watch that video where each and every step has been described in slightly more details. This is a cartridge filter similar to like a filter we have at home, water purifier filter, or if anybody has a commercial RO, they may have certain micron filters. So these are the cartridge filter. There's a filter inside. Depending on the pore size of that filter, it will be 1 micron, 0.2 micron, whatever micron, depending on the fruit and depending on the clarity you want, you can decide which micron to use. Now we also have a slightly bigger four-head gravity filling unit, because here's a capping unit where we put unthreaded caps, because in India especially, screw threaded caps are acceptable. Otherwise in foreign typically they use the corks rather than screw caps, but in India like Sula or other wines are basically using screw threaded cap, right? They're like screw, you just rotate it and it comes off. So this is the machine that will put the threads on the unthreaded caps. We have a small lab setup where we can do the measurement of pH, the Brix, the alcohol content, and few other parameters that you need to do. So let me check what the time is. Okay. So I have probably 5 more minutes. In 5 more minutes, I will finish off the things I want to finish, and then we can go to Q&A. So there are 3 key topics I want to cover in next 5 minutes. One of them is licensing, where obviously, as I mentioned, this is still under the state domain, and so we need what is called an excise license. Every state has its own excise ministry and excise department. So please visit your state's excise department, your district excise office, to understand what policy they have. But I'm going to talk about with regards to what we have here in Maharashtra. So it comes under we have to get a license which is called a BRL license, and anybody can apply for it using a form which is called BRA form, and we submit 500 rupees application fee. Along with that, we submit a plan, statements detailing the vessels, the manufacturing process, and few details like what are you exactly doing, right? You take those documents, pay the fees, fill out the BRA form. It's a simple 2-3 page form, and you submit it to the district collector. Once you do that, hopefully within a month, you will get, in Marathi we call it a irada patra, or like a letter of intent, where excise is saying, okay, fine, we have received your application, go ahead and set up your winery, and along with the winery, please submit these 10 items that we had not submitted in the first place. And I have it in English on next slide, which I will read out, don't worry. But basically this is the irada patra we got. Approval to set up. So excise license is a 2-step process. You apply for permission to set up, and then permission to set up, and then afterwards, after everything is set up, again you apply to permission to begin, right? So first step is, I so told you, it was this 500 rupees BRA form, these documents, and submit it to the district collector. Then they will give us an irada patra. Along with that, they have told me that please ensure that when you come up for the final license to operate, you get and you submit all of these things. So in there I need to submit like what else vessels I have, what is the process. I need an NOC from Pollution Control Board. I need this land to be NA, non-agriculture. Certain KYC of the company, like if it's a partnership firm, then I need a partnership deed, MOA, AOA if it's a private limited company, all the machineries that we have, and a copy of project report. So these are the 9 things, along with my overall final application form I will submit. In Maharashtra, the annual fees for BRL license is 57,500. I pay that fees, and hopefully in a month's time, I get my BRL license, which is a license to start operating a winery. Second license we need is the food license, and it's very much in line. The documents required are very much similar to what you need with regards to excise license. And also the license, food license, is very similar to if anybody is already in food processing. It's exactly the same. Everything is same except that the food category here will be a wine. So if you're making snacks, your food category will be different. Let's say 5 point something. Here it will be 14.2, which is the category for winemaking. So what are the documents? Typically, they are going to be KYC document about your company and KYC documents about the owners or the founders. So you have to give the blueprint, the layout, then you have to give the list of directors, partners, their KYC, what all equipments you are setting up, what is the installed capacity, horsepower, photo ID and address proof of all the proprietor, partner, director. And again, this list is exactly the same as if you were getting an FSSAI license for any other food category. The only difference will be number 5, a list of food category. In this case, we will say 14.2, which is wine making. Whereas if you are in dairy, it might be 1 point something. If you are in something else, this number will change. Otherwise, everything else is going to remain the same. You have to give a authority letter as to who's the person responsible. Typically in a small scale, the owner himself is the responsible person. You'll have to submit a water test report. You'll have to submit proof of possession of premises, either a sales deed or a rent agreement or electricity bill. You'll have to submit the partnership deed if it's a partnership firm, or MOA if it is a private limited. You'll have to submit a food safety management system, or at least give an affidavit that we will set it up shortly, and a form 9, which gives us the nomination of person who will be there, who's like an in charge. Because think about it, in big companies, let's say a Hindustan Liver, right? It's not the owners who are physically present at each and every site. So there will be someone who will be nominated through this form. For a small scale, form 9 nominated person will be typically the owner as well. Previously, the food safety officers used to visit, but of late they are also issuing online. So we also submit photos of our manufacturing unit for as far as the application of food license is concerned. Let's quickly look at the financials, and I've made a case study of 25,000 liter tank size as our, so 5,000 liter 5 tanks typically. So 25,000 liters is our installed capacity. Easily you can take up to 3 to 4 batches a year, because fermentation process takes around 9 days. So including the racking and all that steps, easily we can take 3 or even 4 batches every year in the same equipment. So we can potentially get 1 lakh liter of 4 times more, or 1 lakh liter of wine made per year in the same 25,000 liter machinery that we have installed. In 1 lakh liter, typically wines are sold in 750 ml bottles. So number of bottles will be around 1.3 lakh. I've assumed, and a lot of assumptions has been made. You may have to reconsider based on the fruit you select. So the selling price will be around 160 rupees, and whereas the variable cost will be around 85 rupees. This will vary, like one of our premier or one of our prime wines is made from jamun, which is an expensive fruit. But if you go for banana or certain other fruit, probably your cost of manufacturing will be much lower. So these numbers are based on some assumptions. You will have to revisit, recalculate based on the fruits you make. The like say bottle may cost 10 rupees, you may make your own bottle, it may cost 20 rupees. So you'll have to make certain adjustments here. And more or less, if you see, you will get to what we call in accounting term EBITDA of around 59 lakhs or around 25% EBITDA. And we take out the interest, we take out the depreciation, and more or less at profit after tax level, you are somewhere in the range of 10 to 12%. So very much like in lines with what we see in food manufacturing. Again, I'm not trying to make this very rosy, because a lot of will depend on your ability to sell. Ability to manufacture is still one part, but ability to sell, if you're not able to sell that 1 lakh liter per year, then all these calculations actually mean nothing, right? So and for setting up a such size winery, you will need machinery of around 50 lakh rupees. Again, this is on the upper side. You may make your own local machinery, that's fine. But I definitely want to highlight here that this business is a very much working capital intensive, because your batch itself is 3 months or 4 months. You may age it for another 1 or 2 months, then you will sell it, put it in the market. By the time your money comes back, your working capital cycle might actually be even up to 6 months. So it's a very working capital intensive business. A lot of people do set up a project where machinery is 50 lakhs, working capital is 5 lakhs. This is not that kind of a business. It's a very intensive. So hopefully you allocate good amount of money for working capital. You consider at least 6 months, in some cases even 1 year. I mean, if you look at grape wines, or if you have seen some of the hard liquors like Chivas Regal, 12 years, 18 years. So the bottle was made 12 years ago and it's being sold now. So your money is stuck for 12 years, 18 years. So same thing happens here. Your money might be stuck for 6 months, even a year. So make sure you have allocated that much for working capital. Otherwise, you'll set everything up and you'll get stuck because you have not allocated enough for working capital. Similarly, I put in some more. People from finance may appreciate some of these numbers, but definitely I can tell you that this is a good business, upcoming business, good margins, and people are ready to pay a premium if you have a good product, right? I mean, we have seen that in other industries as well. People are ready to pay 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees for a tea in a Taj or a 5-star hotel, because they see the premiumness as against a 10 rupee tea on the street, right? So let me quickly finish off the last part, probably of most interest to many of you who might be already home scale manufacturers of wine or want to be. So I'll quickly run through a recipe for mango wine, and then I will be available for any questions that people may have. So if we want to make 1,000 liters of final mango wine, then we start off with around 3,000 kilos of ripe mangoes. We pulp them using the pulpers, and approximately we get around 1,400 kgs of pulp. From that 1,400 kgs, we do an enzyme treatment. If you have the expertise, definitely do it, or use basket press or centrifuge to break down the pectin predominantly, and we get clear juice. So what we got was a pulp for 1,400 liters or 1,400 kgs. From there, we'll get around 1,200 liters of clear juice, relatively clearer juice. Then we add around 20 parts per million of potassium metabisulfite, which will act as a preservative. It will not let the bacterial growth happen, but at this preservative level, the yeast will not die, and so yeast will do its work. So this up until now was our process of fruit processing per se. Now the second phase, which was our fermentation. So if we want a final alcohol content of 7%, we need to have at least 15% sugar content, so that finally we will have 7% alcohol content. So that can be adjusted using cane sugar. If you want to make it sweeter, you add cane sugar. If you want to dilute it, you add water, right? So that adjustment is again a very critical part. Typical starting pH, we keep it as around 4.5 degrees. which again can be adjusted using citric acid, and the temperature maintained is 20 degrees Celsius. These are the ideal conditions for yeast to grow. We use the yeast strain of Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is NCIM 3215 from a company called Zytex. We use around 6% of concentration. We first incubate the yeast because it's dormant, right? So we incubate it for 24 hours and we use that as a starter culture for the production of wine. In our experience, we have seen that fermentation process typically lasts 9 to 10 days, beyond within which the alcohol content is reached the maximum and it's stabilized, and the sugar content is almost gone down to zero. On a daily basis, we do monitor the Brix, which is the sugar content, pH, the titratable acidity, the volatile acidity, and the alcohol content to ensure that the overall winemaking process is on track. Once the fermentation is complete, we chill it to 10 degrees, where the yeast will die at that temperature and it will settle down. Then a few rounds of racking, and side by side, obviously, aging is also happening for maybe 1 month, 1.5 months, again, depending on the fruit versus depending it will within a month or so, it will be ready for bottling. So once the racking is done, fermentation is complete, bottling, racking is done. Now it's relatively clearer. Then we use the plate and frame filters, using filters of 10 micron first, then 5 micron. Then we use a cartridge filter, maybe up to 1 micron size, so that the wine that we may get is relatively clear, which is acceptable and which is what the market is expecting. Finally, we again add 40 parts per million, 40 ppm of KMS, potassium metabisulfite, and our 1,000 liter of our wine is ready, which will be bottled, capped, and could be stored for further aging or can be sent for dispatch. So that's what I wanted to cover in a short period, I think of 40-45 minutes was what I wanted to cover. And we can move on to any question answers or questions in chat box. I can address those as well.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
So
sure,
now, as you said, like we will take some time for the Q&A session, sir.
Sure.
So, sir, we have a question from Mr. Dhaval Nagda. So he's asking is like, what is the ppm level for sulfur before and after?
Yeah. So before fermentation, I think I mentioned in my talk in one of my last slides, where it's 20 parts per million to 20 ppm is what we add prior to fermentation, because we don't want the yeast to get affected. And post fermentation, 40 ppm is enough, because alcohol by itself will play a role of preservative. But in case there is any yeast that gets into the final wine, and in case there is any sugar remaining, then secondary fermentation may happen and the bottles may burst or something like that could happen. So prior to fermentation, we added 20%, 20 ppm in juice making, juice to wine. And then finally, before bottling, we add 40 ppm KMS, potassium metabisulfite.
So our next question is from Mr. Pratik Kamath, sir. So his question is like, what is the amount of yeast added for this process?
So again, that was part of my presentation. So we make a 6% solution, and again, it will depend on the fruit. In fact, we have taken trials where we have also used baker's yeast in many of the wines that we have made. So it will vary from yeast to yeast, but I think it was part of my presentation. So some of these questions had come before
Yes,
I reached the recipe part. So most of them were actually addressed.
Okay, sir. And then now, sir, same Mr. Pratik has also asked, like, does the sulfur dioxide will not cause discoloration in case of red wine?
Yes, there is a chance of that happening, but then again, it will depend on which wine it is. And like I said, the red wine made from red grapes, the color is much more stable. Some of our other colored fruits have that problem, so you may want to use less of KMS. But then that is where the art and the science comes into picture. So a
Okay.
little bit of trial and error definitely will be needed.
Okay, sir. So our other question is from Ms. Mariam Cherian. How long can we store wine according to the legal laws? As the more time we keep, the more it gets fermented when it comes to grapevine.
Um, See, as per FSSAI, if the alcohol content is less than 10%, then you need to give a shelf life. You have to claim a shelf life. Otherwise, there's no concept of shelf life or an expiry for an alcoholic beverage, because in fact, for wines, for certain varieties of wines, older the wine, the better it's supposed to be, right? So it's not like there is an expiry date per se, but in our experience, especially in fruit wines, we have found that 2 to 3 years is the max the wine should be consumed within. Beyond that, the taste uh, tends to deteriorate, is what our experience has been in, because we have been making the wines since 2016. So I have a data for 6 years. So I don't have data for what happens 20 years if I keep the wine. But I can tell you that most of these wines, in 3 to 4 years max, their taste will remain flat or it will start deteriorating. So you should not try to keep them for too long.
Yes, sir. So the question is raised by Mr. Kunal Maitre. So he's asking, like, how do we maintain consistency in taste, since every year the taste of the fruit changes based on the climatic condition?
So that's where the expertise of the winemaker comes into picture, and winemaker is actually uh, one of a profession or one of the roles, and that's what some of us have. We are basically what we call winemakers. So that's where the expertise come in. Even in many cases, even in big brands, the winemaker is still coming from Italy. A brand is 20 years old, but still the winemaker comes from Italy, because that's his expertise, and that's where the science and the art part comes into picture, and it's not that easily transferable, right? So uh, I mean, if I knew the easy answer to the question, uh, that's where people like me are in business, right? I mean, let me put it that way.
Okay, sir.
And there are
So,
many well-known winemakers in India also, and obviously across the world. So that's a profession by itself.
here other question is how we can store non-seasonal fruit if we want to make fruit wines, if that is the case.
So we have made wines from frozen pulp. Like Jain Irrigation is a big player of fruit processing in Maharashtra. We have purchased jamun pulp from them and made jamun wine. So you can store it in a frozen format, or you can buy frozen pulp. Is a very well established market. If possible, if it is unheated, like unpasteurized, it's better. But even if it is, we have done all possible things: mango, pasteurized mango, heat treated mango, from fresh pulp, from frozen pulp, all possible things. But that's where small expertise will come into play. But anything is possible. Anything and everything is possible. The only thing is, typically in these cases, if you're buying from outside, if there is preservatives that they have added, then there could be a problem. But in typically in frozen, preservatives are not added.
Okay, sir. So there is a question from Ms. Shikha. What is the alternate of pectinase enzyme when wine is made at home?
Uh, One of them could be filtering, having better filtration, or
Okay.
using a centrifuge. There is, I don't think there is any other, at least I don't know for sure that there is any other alternative that is coming into my mind. But
Okay.
yeah, filtration could be at a lower micron filtration, because see what's happening at home, you're not doing enzyme treatment, you're not using the best filtration levels, everything at every place, you are using a shortcut. And that's the key difference between a home scale wine versus a commercial scale wine, where we are using a centrifuge, we are using zero point 0.2 micron cartridge filter. If you are using 0.2 micron, everything else will get filtered out. You don't really have to worry about anything.
Okay, sir. So other question is from Ms. Sushma. Can dried fruits can be used to make wines?
Yes, they can be, yes. So for example, I did mention about mawa, which are flowers. And so what we got were actually mawa, dried mawa flowers, right? So you basically reconstitute them, and you can definitely, in fact, dried fruits will have higher sugar content to begin with. Like mawa flowers, when we made, had almost 55% sugar content, because at fruit level typically, or even at flower level typically, the sugar content will be 12, 13%, 15% maybe. But because it's dehydrated or dried, then say 60, 70, even 80% of water might be removed. So, but simple answer to it is yes, it can be made, because you can reconstitute it and adjust the bricks by adding water, or if need be by adding sugar, and definitely you can make it.
Sir, other question is from Mr. Samrat Roy. Can I use bakery yeast to make wine?
Yes, I did mention that, I think briefly, that
Okay.
we have tried it on many of the fruits, but definitely if you want to go for a commercial scale, wine yeast is preferred compared to bakery yeast, because it will eliminate a lot of possible problems. But baker's yeast is also fine. We have used it on jackfruit, we have used it on other certain fruits like cashew apple and all that. Can you use it? Yes, you can use it. Just only one concern could be methanol formation should not happen, which most likely it will not, but that's the only concern. Otherwise there is no reason why you cannot use it.
Sir, other question is from Ms. Grace Delin. I tried making pineapple wine. However, the final product was not pleasant. Perhaps the acidity from the pineapple is too strong. Sir, kindly explain a brief recipe for pineapple wine.
See, and that's why I call it a recipe, but actually it's not a recipe per se. It's the process, right? It's the process, it's the skill, it's the art, it's the science. There's no recipe. Like when we talk about bakery products, you talk about 60% maida, 20% fat, 10% sugar. This is not for wines. It's not a recipe. So there is a process, I would say. And at this point in, I have a pineapple process also, but without seeing what exactly parameters you had, what went wrong, like it didn't taste well, means what? Is it flat? Is it so many times the pH is the key. If it is very low pH, then it will become sour or tart, and if it is too high pH, so it's more less acidic, then the taste will be flat. So probably the pH you had was where the whole problem is with regards to the overall wine, whatever wine you made it.
Okay, sir. So our other question is from Miss Sangeeta. Sorry. Yeah. Can we use both whole wheat and yeast together in wine?
So wine by definition is made from fruits. Typically when grains are fermented, we get beer, right? So that the grain preservation was done through fermentation into beer, and fruit fermentation was done, preservation was done through wine. So I'm not sure this question itself is valid with regards to wheat and yeast together in wines, because wheat will not necessarily give you wine. Wheat will through fermentation of wheat, you will end up getting beer per se. Like
Okay.
barley and other grains are being used in making of beers.
Okay, sir. Sir, other question is from Mr. Parag. Are there any government schemes for finance the project or any subsidies given by GOM government?
So typically government has schemes at central level and at state level. So at central level, there are three key ministries which support probably what we want to do. So there is Ministry of Food Processing, Ministry of MSME, and Ministry of Agriculture, right? And at state level, again, like in Maharashtra, there's Industries Ministry where they have a package scheme, incentive scheme. So firstly, you'll have to figure out whether you're talking about government, central government or state government. Like central government under MSME is giving you PMEGP. Maharashtra government has a similar scheme called CMEGP. MSME ministry has a scheme called CLCSS. So there are various schemes. I know I'm not giving you a direct answer, but I'm just telling you that there are many schemes. Why I'm not giving you a direct answer is because many a times the schemes are eligible for non-alcoholic kind of products. Alcoholic are many a times considered, alcohol, cigarette, tobacco are considered as a negative list kind of industries, and most of the times many schemes are not eligible. So if you can read between the lines in what I'm saying, because winemaking is, as far as I'm concerned, it's an extension of food processing or a fruit processing. But if someone sitting on the other side is looking at from alcohol kind of a thing, then probably the answer is no, there are no schemes involved. But if you are able to structure it properly, there are schemes through various governments, state or center. And in fact, Maharashtra at one point in time had a wine subsidies and scheme for wines around 15-20 years back. So something like that, you will have to encourage your government to look at wine not as classified again with the hard liquors, the IMFLs or the vodkas and the rums, but look at it more like one of the requirements, if you remember, during the licensing process I mentioned, was that you need a non-agriculture land, which is a big hurdle right now as far as Maharashtra is concerned. And we are taking it up with our local government, where we are telling that if you want to consider this as fruit processing, then you should allow agricultural land to be used for, because you are allowing fruit other processing in agri land, then why are you insisting that winemaking should also be in non-agricultural land? So I know I've not answered this question directly, but because of that, unfortunately, where wine still, no matter how much I shout and say that it's fruit processing, it's still classified as an alcoholic beverage, where there's sometimes a lot of negativity attached to it.
Okay, sir. So other question is from Mr. Yamnam Nandan. What are the chances of methanol formation, or how to avoid methanol formation in wine?
So like I said, that methanol formation depends on the yeast strain that you have used. So if you are using what is called a wine yeast, right, like people are selling on online or Amazon or Zytex and Novozymes and like so many other companies who sell, if they are calling in a wine yeast, then 99.9%, not 99.9, 100% methanol formation will not happen, because what is yeast doing? It is consuming the sugar and converting it into ethyl alcohol. So if you are using those strains which are called wine yeast, then methanol formation will absolutely not happen. But if you are using random yeast, like I'll tell you, on cashew apple, it has four natural found yeast strains on itself, because it's nature's design that as soon as the fruit falls, the decay starts. So nature has given itself some yeast strains which will decay the fruit, right? So if you use those strains, for example, then some of them may actually make methanol. And in fact, since I've been talking about this topic many a times, I've been thinking that why not, why is methanol not made through this route of fruit fermentation? Probably it's not a viable option, and that's why it's not being made. It's made commercially, but methanol making from like cashew apple, for example, 100% of almost of it is going waste in Ratnagiri and Sindhudurg. Why can't we make methanol out of it?
Okay, sir. So the other question is from Ms. Sushma B. Rao. Can we not make a wine into a powder form? Is it possible?
No, I don't think it will be possible. Because see, what you make into powder form, let's say onion powder you make, right? So onion typically will have 90% water and then other 7 to 10% solids, right? So either fiber or ash or anything. So typically when we do dehydration, almost all of the water is removed, and what is remaining is the fat. What is remaining is the solids. For example, we make milk powder, so it has fat and it has solid non-fat. So typically we may get 15% or so dried format of the milk. But in alcohol, in wine, what is going to happen is, through the filtration and all that, there is not going to remain any solids in there. So everything will get evaporated, and it will not get converted. Even alcohol in fact has a lower boiling point than water. So everything will get evaporated, and probably what you remain will be as good as zero. So my take on it is that no, we cannot.
Okay, sir. Sir, Our other questions from Ms. Janil. What are the channels to market the wine we produce in India and export?
Okay, so there are many restrictions as far as alcoholic beverages are concerned. So one is you cannot advertise it unless you advertise it as a packaged drinking water or an airlines or even music CDs. So you are not supposed to advertise. You can only advertise at uh, point of sale. So wine shops will have that. So typically that's one distribution channel where you go through distributor and wine shops, or you can go through pubs and clubs, like you have, pop tates, or like you have chain of certain pubs, and so it's distribution is a little bit of a challenge because there are certain restrictions. Up until now you are not allowed to sell online, you are not allowed to do home delivery. So there are certain restrictions. Fortunately, unfortunately, because of COVID, it has a lot of it has diluted, because if I'm not allowed to advertise, how I can put a WhatsApp image saying ki we will deliver home? So it is an advertisement. So a lot of these things have blurred in recent times, where maybe after COVID, again, they will become much more strict. So that's a key challenge as far as selling is concerned. You can sell it only through a FL2 or an FL3 kind of a restaurant or bar, and or a wine shop, or a beer shoppy concept we have in Maharashtra, where only wines and beers can be sold. You cannot sell it in any kind of grocery store. Secondly, export, I think, has good demand, especially because some of these fruits are not available, like jamun. Jamun is considered healthy for diabetes, and during the winemaking process itself, the fruit sugar is getting converted into alcohol. So in fact, in Ayurveda, we have all these things. Asav, that we call Jambasav, Kumari Asav, Drakshasav, these are all wines. It's the same product. If you drink a Jambasav and my wine, technically, scientifically, it's the same product. One is being sold under Ayurvedic, 10% alcohol content. One is being sold as wine under the excise and FSSA, 10% alcohol content.
Okay, sir. Sir, a last question from Ms. Swapnil. Can we make an organic wine? Is it possible?
See, organic is a very loosely used word here. Many times, organic. There are two parts to the organic. One is where the agriculture aspects we use the organic. So most of the time, organic. You talk about organic wheat, you talk about organic rice, organic sugar cane. So one is that part where the growth of your, so in this case, in the raw material. So whether I have organically grown mango, that is the starting point. Secondly, when the processing happens, it's typically not called organic. It's actually FSSA has a thing called, which is called Jaivik Bharat. So where you have to use at least 95% of organic raw materials, and the process has to be organic. But as far as my understanding goes, because we are using yeast, I don't think we can call any of these wines to be organic. My fruit can be organic. In fact, jamun, nobody does jamun farming per se. So today, all the jamun that is available in the market, almost 90% or more, is all organic. A lot of jackfruit that is available in the market is all organic. But whether my wine can be called organic, my take on it is that no, we cannot call the wine to be organic.
Okay, sir. So now we would like to end up the Q&A
Sure,
session, sir. Thank you, sir.
sure.
Uh, yes, sir. So this is to keep you informed that Synergy Exposures and High-Techs are jointly organizing Food and Drink Processing Expo from 18th to 20th November at High-Techs, wherein food and beverage manufacturers, investors, project owners, managers, and consultants can get first-hand information on latest trends and solutions for their businesses. I would request everyone to log into www.fdpexpo.com for more details for the upcoming expo. Now, I would like to thank Sir for the session, and this session was very much informative and insightful. We wish to have many more sessions in line with beverage processing. So we thank everyone for your valuable time, which you all shared with us. So thanks for sharing your valuable time and giving us insight and guidance, sir. Thank you, sir. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Good evening.